Hey everybody, this is Brian, and you are listening to the Perfectly Screwed podcast. Jason cannot be with us today. He thinks he might have COVID. So for the next couple episodes, y'all just get me, which is great. Hope you're happy just listening to my maleficent voice. Maleficent? I don't know if that's the right word. Melatonin in it? I don't know. But hopefully you're happy listening to me by myself. This is episode 57. I wanted to start off the episode today saying thank you for all that do listen to us every week. I know there's a few of you out there, and let me tell you something. Me and Jason do appreciate it. We appreciate all our loyal listeners, and we appreciate everybody that listens to us every single week. And we hope you all are doing good. We hope that your life is doing well. Even though Jason isn't here, I want you to know the drinking game is still in effect. For all those who don't know what the drinking game is, the drinking game is anytime I mess up a word, you're supposed to take a shot or drink. And I hope y'all are playing fairly and not cheating yourselves or me. You know, lately, something I did want to talk about is that lately in the news, we have been seeing a lot of crazy things going on. Just recently, over the 4th of July, we had the Highland Park shooting, which was just incredibly insane and a complete senseless act of violence and nonsense. That guy should be tortured and then raped and then tortured some more for the things he did. I was reading one story, and it was about a 2-year-old, and I feel really bad about this because I guess his mother, father, and him were at this parade in Highland Park. And for all of you that don't know, this is a very sad story. They were at the parade, and the shooter first killed his mother. When the shooting went on, the father jumped on top of the little 2-year-old to try to protect him from the bullets and from the shooting. Well, in that, the father was also shot and killed. Now, the 2-year-old survived this, but was wandering around not knowing where his mother and father were. And I think the saddest part about that is that when they took him to the police station, his grandparents finally arrived, that he was asking when mommy and daddy are going to get here. And that is probably the saddest part of that whole thing, is that that poor little 2-year-old had no idea that his mother and father were no longer with us. And that's horrible, if you ask me. Just completely horrible. But anyways, to move on to happier things, we're going to be talking about serial killer today. A serial killer, and it's a serial killer from my home state of Indiana, actually, which is, pretty cool because, there's a few serial killers that we talked about on here, and most of them come from other states, other regions, but this guy actually comes from Indiana. His name is Darren Vann, and he was a serial killer near Gary, Indiana. And Darren Vann is not only rare because he's from Indiana, but he's rare because most serial killers are not African American. Most serial killers are white males. And Darren Vann happens to be one of the very few serial killers that happens to be an African American. So, we're just going to get right into it. Darren Dion Vann was born on March 21st, 1971. He is an American serial killer, and he was arrested on October 18th, 2014. So, actually, not that long ago. He actually committed the murder not in Gary, but in Hammond, Indiana. He killed a 19-year-old, Afrika Hardy, at a Motel 6 in Hammond, Indiana. And he confessed while he was in custody to 6 other female victims, actually. So he said that he killed a total of 7 women. He led the police to the women's bodies, which were all found in abandoned houses in Gary, Indiana. So, let's see here. Vann was born, like I said, on March 21st, 1971. He was born in Indiana. He was married to, for 16 years, to a lady named Maria Vann. She was about 30 years older than him, which is really odd that he married a much, much older lady. It makes me think that maybe there was some kind of, mother matricide kind of thing going on there. That possibly, he had a thing for his mom and was expressing it that way, and that's why he killed women. Or maybe just like older women. Who knows? We don't really know. He got divorced from her in 2009, and he was also in the Marine Corps. And in 1993, he got a dishonorable discharge, or other than honorable discharge. So he joined the Marines in 91, and less than 2 years later, they let him go for whatever reason on that. He was arrested in Gary for threatening the life of his girlfriend previously to the murder charges. He got a Class D felony for that, spent 90 days in jail. He was also convicted in Texas in 2009 of sexual assault that he committed in Austin, Texas in 2007, and he had 5 years for that. So he was released in 2013. So we have kind of a history here of the things he had done. He had a history of murder, or of violence against women. He also had a history of threatening women and committing sexual assault, rape, stuff of that nature. So, again, we have a guy here who had committed a lot of crimes. And see, this is the thing. Vann had a really troubled childhood. His mother was physically abusive. His father was physically abusive. He had things that he says in his past caused him to rage out. And he admitted in interviews with detectives that his rage, and this rage that was inside of him from his past and from the beatings and from the things that happened to him in his past, is one of the reasons he did what he did. Although Vann is interesting also because Vann is very weird in his speech. He talks randomly. He says some very odd things. And a lot of times the police let him go speaking. Now, he admitted his 7, but the police think there's many more. And Vann, in interviews after the first one and after his confession, admitted there was a lot more. The other thing is, when Vann got convicted in Texas, strangulations in Chicago and around the Illinois border went down a lot. And he admitted that he would get on a train. He would randomly pick victims and he would strangle them and murder them. His preferred method of killing was strangulation. His victims were all women, and that shows kind of a psychological need to act out against women. Usually it's something against your mother. And Vann admitted that his mother was very violent to him, belittling, things of that nature. He wouldn't go extensively into his past to talk about those things, but he said that family problems and the things would get into his mind, and then he would have this feeling of rage and anger, and the only way to take those feelings away was to basically kill someone, and it had to be a woman. And so in 2014, the police interviewed Vann, and he described his killings as a mistake and told officers rages caused him to go looking for an out. Those outs, Vann said, included killings in California, Texas, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan. And he mentioned Chicago as a place where he went a lot. He said that Illinois has more than Indiana, Vann told police. When they asked him where he stayed, he said, I did not stay anywhere. I would get on a train, I would get on a bus. I'd be like, I'm losing it. I tried to get far away from my family when I felt myself slipping into this other person. The weird thing is he was completely matter of fact when he confessed all of this. And it's strange because Vann has, like I said, some really bizarre stuff that he says. But he says it in like a normal, everyday way, like it's normal shit. And, it was almost like the police officers, they were acting like what he was saying was normal to get him to keep talking. They were trying to act like they were his buddy. So, he kept going on and talking about some really weird and dark things. They tried to get him to tell him about other victims, but he wouldn't. But he did tell him about his urges to kill and that he traveled to find victims. So this is the thing. He admitted to 7. He was definitely convicted of 1. And, it's like he has killed many, many more. I mean, it's very clear that this man has killed multiple people in his times. Mostly probably around the Chicago area. Although, in his own admission, he says that he went to Minnesota. He said he went to Texas, Wisconsin, Missouri, Chicago. He said a lot of times Illinois. So he killed a lot. He said there was more in Illinois than there was in Indiana. So that tells you right there that Vann was definitely killing a lot of people in Illinois. And he said that one of the triggers was from his past was she struck me and I don't like being hit. So see, that shows you right there that his mother was physically abusive. And that physical abuse when he was a child, coupled with probably a severe mental disorder, turned this man into, and we've discussed this on previous podcasts, we've discussed this with many other serial killers, Eileen Wuornos, for instance. She was one we discussed this about, that her past and the abuses that she suffered in her past kind of led to who she became. It kind of led to the person that she was going to become later in life. Like with Eileen Wuornos, she was raped by her father. She was raped by his friend. She was giving sexual favors to men. She was treated like a sexual object by men her whole entire life. And then she ended up killing men who wanted to have sex with her for money. And this is the same thing. It's like this Vann guy was abused by his mother at an early age. And he had been abused by her, and physically abused by her. So whenever he got mad, he took all of that rage and all of that anger out on women. You know, he found women and he killed them. And really, he was trying to take that anger out on his mother, but he was redirecting it towards his victims. And it's the same thing with Kemper and the same thing with a lot of them. A lot of serial killers that we have talked about. And in society alone, a lot of serial killers who couple abuse with a mental illness. And basically what you have is the perfect storm for a person to grow up and take those feelings out on someone else. So anyways, back to Vann. At another interview, Vann told investigators that sometimes he doesn't really need any reason at all. He said that one of his victims, Casper, was his friend. And he said he didn't even mean to kill her. But he was already angry. There has been over 50 unsolved strangulations of women in the Chicago area. And he said that he believes they believe Vann could be one of many that are possibly killing these women. But they definitely think that Vann is one of the killers. And if you look year by numbers of the murders in Chicago, you will see a decline in unsolved strangulations from 2009 and after 2009 near Hargrove, Illinois, near Chicago. And that was when Vann was sentenced in Texas from 2008 to 2013. So during those years, when he was sentenced to prison in Texas, there was a steep decline in the number of unsolved strangulations in Chicago. And Vann himself even told investigators that he would travel to Chicago on train or bus. And they looked at the murders of women near the CTA line, the bus line, and they found 8 or 9 body recovery sites. And they don't think that's a coincidence at all, and I wouldn't either. I mean, seriously, if this guy is known for strangling women, he says he goes to Chicago and kills them. Now, he's not going to admit it, and they're not going to press it, because they already got him for life, you know. But the thing is, you know, he already admitted that he goes to Chicago. He admits he goes to these other states. He admits there's more victims in Illinois than in Indiana. So, clearly, you know, and also, again, when he was in prison, the strangulations go down in Chicago by quite a bit. Enough that, you know, police noticed it. All of that tells you that obviously this man was committing severe murders way past the 7 that he was or admitted to. And Vann even said that all of his victims were random, all random. He said all it does is take the wrong person to say something or to trigger something from my past. He said police did locate one of the bodies, Vann said, but he said it wasn't mine. That's what he said. He said it was the wrong one. Now, Vann lived in Gary, Indiana, and the one that they knew that he killed, the 19-year-old, he got a hold of on Backpage.com, where she was advertising as a prostitute. So this is what his MO normally was. He would get these women, prostitutes, or women that were down and out, and he would say, hey, you know, I got some money, or I'll pay for sex, or whatever. And then when they would get to the motel, he would kill them. Or when they got to the abandoned building or wherever he took them, he'd kill them. Now, Maria Vann was who he was married to. And She doesn't like to talk about this because she divorced him and she got tired of, obviously reporters irritating her with the story. But her son, who we don't know his name because he always wants to remain anonymous, he said that he had suspicions of Vaughn long before that. He never liked him, that the man would talk to himself. He would have conversations with a person that wasn't there. He would get angry for no reason. And that he never understood why Vaughn was interested in his mother because she was so much older than him, 30 years older than him. And again, that comes down to maybe he had a thing for his real mother. And Vaughn could have, even the woman he married could have to him been a surrogate type mother. That's why he chose a woman so much older than him. It was like a replacement for his real mother. Now, Vaughn, he would either kill the women in abandoned homes in Gary, or he would, lure them to hotels and kill them. Some police believe that there are a lot more victims. Vaughn has hinted that there's a lot more victims, and they believe it goes back at least 20 years from some of the statements that he said. He claims crimes he committed in Indiana go back at least 20 years. And they said they only thought Vaughn cooperated because of a deal. And I think he only cooperated because of a deal, because he got a plea deal. Vaughn got a plea deal for life in prison instead of the death penalty. And I think the only reason he admitted to any of the murders, any of the 7 in Indiana, was so that he could avoid the death penalty. According to the police, Vaughn moved 43. He was 43 when all this happened. Moved from Austin to Gary in 2004 after his divorce. And then he was convicted again, as we've said, in 2007. So, this is when he was arrested. They found the 19-year-old, Afrika Hardy, strangled in a Motel 6 in Hammond, Indiana. And they used Hardy's phone records, and they located Vaughn. When Vaughn was found, he was in possession of several key pieces of evidence, including Hardy's phone. During the investigation, he confessed that he killed Hardy and told police that he had killed others. His first court hearing was October 22nd. However, he was found in contempt of court at that point. And his next hearing was the 28th. He pled not guilty to 2 charges of murder filed against him in the deaths of Afrika Hardy and Anitha Jones. And he pled not guilty to robbery. In 2016, Vaughn was charged with the deaths of the additional 5 victims. The death penalty was originally sought, and they were going for the death penalty. But because he took a plea agreement, they didn't give him the death penalty. In 2018, Vaughn pled guilty to 7 murders as part of a plea agreement for the prosecutors to drop the death penalty. He was sentenced to 7 consecutive life sentences without parole. Now, here are the victims that we do know about. His first victim was Afrika Hardy, 19, and she had recently moved to Chicago after graduating from high school. She was propositioned by Vaughn on the internet as a prostitute. She met Vaughn at a Motel 6 in Indiana, and she was found dead and strangled in the bathtub of the room on October 17, 2014. Anita Jones, 35, of Gary, Indiana, was last seen alive October 8th of 2014. She was missing 2 days later. After Vaughn's arrest, he led police to an abandoned house in Gary, where her body was found. Tarita Bailey, 28, of Gary, Indiana, she left to meet a friend on January 2014. She never returned. She was reported missing, and her body was also by Vaughn. Vaughn led police to her body in an abandoned house in Gary, Indiana. Christine Williams, 36th, of Gary, Indiana, was a mother of 4 and employed at the time of her death. She went missing in February 2014. And Vaughn led them to another abandoned house in Gary, Indiana, where her body was found. Tracy Martin, 41, of Gary, Indiana, was reported missing June 26th of 2014. And Vaughn led them to her body in another different abandoned house in Gary, Indiana. Sonia Billingsley, 53, of Gary, Indiana, was reported missing on February of 2014. Her body was found in the abandoned house with the body of Tanya Gatlin. So he dumped Tanya Gatlin and Sonia Billingsley in the same house. So Tanya Gatlin had been missing since January of 2014, and her body was in an abandoned house in Gary, Indiana, also where Sonia Billingsley had been. Now, he preyed on these women that he knew would not be missed. He did this on purpose. He was actually really intelligent about this. He made sure that the women were people that were disconnected from their families and couldn't be found, wouldn't be missed immediately, except for one of them, the mother of 4. But most of Vaughn's victims had a life of drugs or prostitution or both. And all the families knew they were spiraling downward. They knew that they had been separated for their families. And Vaughn took this for these 7 women, and he knew that he could get away with pretty much murdering them because these women were living on the streets, most of them. They were in drugs. They were in prostitution. A couple of them were staying in the abandoned houses where he killed them because they were homeless. So he knew that these type of women would not be missed by the public, that he could get away with killing these type of women, that these women were easily murdered without suspicion. And he was right. Most of them did get missing persons reports, but some of them were a month later, some of them were a few days later, some of them were a week later. And even if they were reported missing, because they were prostitutes and because they were on drugs, and because they were living outside of what, a normal person would call society, and they didn't have, normal jobs and stuff like this, it was easy for people to just say, well, they're probably on a binge, or they're probably off somewhere, or they're doing this, or they're doing that. And that's one of the reasons he got away with this so long. Another thing is that he got away with this for so long, and they would have probably, if he had not had direct contact with the last victim, they might have not caught this guy for a lot longer than they did. Mainly they caught him because his last victim, he propositioned on the internet. And because, they traced her last call from her phone to Vaughn. But if it hadn't been for that, he might have gotten away with this for a lot longer than he did. And they might have never found his other victims. I mean, he only admitted to the other 6 because he knew that if he didn't, he was going to get the death penalty for the one. So to avoid dying and being killed, Vaughn had to give the prosecutor something. So he said, look, I've killed other people. I'll admit to this freely. I'll confess to the whole thing. I'll do life in prison. But as long as you don't give me the death penalty, I'll admit to all this and I'll show you where they are. And that's basically why he did it. Otherwise, they would have never tied this man to the other killings. And from Vaughn's many, many other statements, he didn't directly confess, but from his statements that he made and what he said, it's clear that this man has killed many, many other women in many, many other states. Illinois, he said he traveled to Texas. I mean, this was not his first killings. These were not his first 7. He'd been killing women, like they said, possibly for 20 years. Possibly going back 20 years. And I believe he did. I mean, he probably did. I mean, you just don't start randomly killing, only killing 7. There's probably, hundreds under his belt. And he's probably been doing this, for a very, very long time. And he's 47 when he got convicted. Pretty much most serial killers start in their 20s, 30s. He was probably killing way before that, and they just never found out about it. But one of the other things was there was no connection whatsoever in the victims. They were different races. They were different ages. The only real connection is they were women. Other than that, and the fact that he strangled every one of them and beat them and raped them. I mean, he raped every single one of his victims. He beat them. He strangled them. So those are connections in the killings. But other than that, these victims were not really connected in any shape, way, or form. And what I want to do now is I want to play you his actual police, some of his police interview tape and his confessions and stuff. Just so you can hear how crazy this guy really truly is. So right now we're going to listen to the some of the taped confession of Vaughn.
And what was fresh in your mind from there that occurred? Like the one murder just previous to the Motel 6.
I can't give you the one before the Motel 6 because that's outstate. The one before that was somebody I knew. She owed me money, didn't pay me.
Well, obviously that would be an easy one to start with if you know her.
Well, I don't know her, like I know her on the street.
Okay. You don't know her name or
Casper. Her nickname on the street was Casper. She was a prostitute.
How old would you say?
I wouldn't know how old Casper is. I would say late 20s, early 30s. Well, I could be wrong because they're on drugs.
Well, I'm just asking you. I mean, you also seem to be pretty intelligent, so I think you know what you're talking about.
Okay, she was young. The girl was missing. I think they say she was late 30s, early 40s. But I saw the post before. I really didn't pay no attention. I just knew the face.
Now, Casper, what she look like?
She's a Caucasian. Casper's about, 200 feet. I'm not good with descriptions. She's like about this size. I don't know how you would describe a girl is this size. She's really thick. Heavy set. Some people say big, maybe that was you. Karen's King. That's why I say she's even 28. She's a long way there, yes. I don't know what's going on around. I'm colorblind, so.
All right.
So she's 28 to 32. I'm not gonna no older. Okay. Because she is, I don't think so.
Around what time is this happening?
I'm trying to think. See, I can't be sure the time I killed Casper because I did something that same day.
Where did you kill her in?
Oh, see, if I say that, y'all go to the house. I killed her with Gary. I'll leave with Gary, I'm telling you.
Okay, so Casper's a prostitute in Gary?
Yes.
Okay.
She's a prostitute in Gary. She's another one.
So Casper's body's inside of an abandoned house?
Right now, yeah.
Right now?
Right now.
On the street?
I see her way on. Yeah, I'm not good at street. She's off Broadway. I want to say Connecticut. It's all over Massachusetts, Connecticut mixed up.
So one block east.
Oh, Broadway.
One block.
I'm not sure. I just know you go the road and you know how to cut the road. I know the trail is cut through. We cut through. I cut through the alley. They go through another abandoned house to get to this house. The reason? Yeah, there's a bunch of abandoned houses. Right.
Off of Little Bean Street.
That's what I'm saying. He was kept negative. Massachusetts. I don't come off the house off the Broadway. I come to the field when I go there.
So it would be one or 23?
It's all, this is the main part.
In one block. So south of the road?
Yeah, it's really South Ridge.
South of the ridge.
I'm gonna give you, one is by, you know what one is? It's one by another. One is by, I want to say, 1, 2, 3 is by Georgia Street, Good Park. One is by, no, they were the one, it wasn't the right one. Well, it wasn't one of mine.
Okay. Well,
Now, see, right there, I wanted to point out, it shows you in that clip how crazy his thoughts are, how unreasonable his thoughts are. He can't even tell you exactly where he dumped this woman. Also, I wanted to point out that his first victim, okay, the one they caught him with, not his first one, but the 19-year-old, Afrika, was an African-American woman. This woman was a white girl, both prostitutes. Because, you know, there's some say his mom might have been a prostitute. And that's why he targeted prostitutes. But this shows you how convoluted and how messed up his thoughts are, that he doesn't even remember where he dumped the bodies of one of his victims. So let's go back to this tape.
I don't know their streets like that. You know what I mean?
inside the building?
It's inside the house.
Or was it inside of buildings?
Yeah, it's inside the building.
Oh, and I agree that you kind of want to put an end to this, and
It would be easier just to be like famous. If they ever have, you don't have to move with them.
would you be willing?
Yeah, because the police are in one house, because they remove the right thing, they will find a body.
Okay.
Right.
Would you be willing to take us and, I don't know what to call it, like a field trip and just show us?
I have these whatever body don't, right?
You're really proud of that?
I don't really call it work. I call it my mistakes.
Your riches?
Yeah, my race. When stuff don't go right, I go looking for an out. I usually try to go to Illinois where I have my guns. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
But if I don't have a way to get there or I'm getting help, like right now I'm watching my sister kids, so if I get upset, I can't just leave, I'm on schedule. You see what I mean? And that schedule compresses how to do things.
What is the cost of going to the age?
Last year it's really kind of can't work. They want 7 years, they want this. I went to get my ID, they want to get my ID. It's so much. I just like I'm tired.
Does that do anything for you?
But it relieves, I won't say relieves pressure. Because really I just, my brother tells me how crazy. I tell my time just want to walk or something and blow everything up.
I guess what I'm asking, how do you connect the rage with these people
They're random. All they do is take a wrong person, say something or trigger something from my past. That's why I really can't give you Illinois, because Illinois probably has a whole lot of, they got more than Indiana, let's say that.
Yeah.
They got way more than Indiana.
over
I don't have to stay anywhere.
there?
I get on the train, I get on the bus. I'll be like, I know I'm moving. I try to get far away from my family when I feel myself slipping.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you ever heard anyone in your family?
I can't get there because that would give you another state. You see what I'm saying? But yes.
See, that right there, I want to put that out there too. He said that there is way more in Illinois than in Indiana. Okay? He also said that he can't give you did he hurt anybody in his family or who he hurt, because that would give them another state. So see, that shows that this man has killed people and hurt people way more than what he's admitting to. And that shows a level of intelligence, because it shows that he knows that if he admits to crimes in other states, that other states can arrest him and possibly give him the death penalty. So he's only admitting to the crimes he committed in Indiana because he thinks if he admits to these crimes, then he will avoid the death penalty here in Indiana, which is exactly what he did. And that's the only reason he admitted to any of the crimes at all in Indiana, because he's a very intelligent, very calculating, very corrupt killer. And as he says in the statement, the rages would take over. He would get this feeling, and he had to release it. So the only way to release it was to randomly kill people. So let's go back to this tape one more time.
Well, this is obviously going to be somewhat difficult because we're going to need some specific information and to be able to verify these and get you where you're going.
Well, I think you do.
I don't think you're going to have any problem.
Okay.
I mean,
I remember he's arrested for these. I call these on the surface, they deal with something that triggered my anger. I was already angry, but they really like Casper. Casper was my friend. I didn't mean to kill her.
what led up to that?
I was already angry.
What were the recover her body?
I would do Casper for it because she was my friend. She was a good person.
What were you doing?
That's why I said we can take that right. That way you know the rest of them trying to kill
Well,
her.
we realize what we're going to do is we're going to put you right in the belt to train down,
That's fine.
and we'll probably put you in some leg shackles. Because this is not something you do every day.
Okay, no, I mean, I don't think you could maybe check because I'm not going to be able to get down where Casper is.
You don't think you'll be able to direct us to it? Right. Well, they're pretty decent. I mean, they're not short leg shackles. I mean,
That's fine.
like I said, I wouldn't stop. I don't have to go back.
I'm not going to have any problem. So we're going to get it.
Yeah, you want to put it behind her.
Well, that's not really behind it. These because they weren't supposed to be, now these weren't supposed to be people I killed.
Mm-hmm.
So these were people really have nothing to do with people hiring me to do stuff.
For the Motel 6, was that supposed to happen, or?
She struck me. And that's just, that's it. I don't like getting hit. I got really surprised. I know I ain't go out, y'all should throw me down, because that's really one of my best. I don't like people striking me or pushing me.
Did you really, this one, it was,
Right.
and we're really getting it.
Right. I see, I can't, let me tell you this, I remember like my niece up there, the kids are just right. That's why I'm trying to get far away, because I wasn't supposed to come. I don't even work with anything. I don't know anything. Somebody can take. I did work for me to get paid. Because they figure I'm a felon and I can't do nothing about it. That I didn't have no contract.
When did that happen?
Friday morning, I went and fixed a drywall for a guy.
Where?
I don't know. They just I put on tag or Facebook and they say come and do somebody pick me up. Whatever.
Now, that's the thing. This guy says that this prostitute, the 19-year-old, struck him, smacked him. The moment she smacked him, that caused instant rage, which shows you that that triggered something from his past. It triggered a memory. It triggered a feeling from his mother and from his past. And he immediately had to kill her. You know, the other one, the one he was talking about, Casper, the white girl who was a prostitute, he said he didn't even mean to kill her. But he was angry already. She came to him. They got in a heated argument. He strangled her. He would release his anger and his frustrations on these women. And that's what we're talking about. You know, he had this past, which was violent. And then he had mental illness, clearly, and he's clearly of a higher level of intelligence. And all of this leads up to a violent sociopathic person, which is what we got yet again with another serial killer. And unfortunately, 7 women lost their lives, and probably many, many more that we will never know about, because he's never going to admit to those, you know. But luckily, you know, he's serving life in prison. He got life. He took a plea deal, and they gave him life in prison, and he will never see the light of day again, which is where a man like this needs to be. So that was the story of Darren Vann, and I hope you guys liked it. This has been Perfectly Screwed Podcast, and next week I plan on doing a story about the Rhodes Hotel. Jason will not be here again, as far as I know. Now, I'm going to try to arrange, hopefully Jason starts feeling maybe a little better, and maybe sometime this week we'll try to get a podcast in so Jason can be on the next one. I don't know if he will be or not, but we're going to try to. If we can, then cool. If not, then, you know, it'll just be me again. But this has been episode 57, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, even though it was just me. I hope you guys listen, and hopefully Jason gets the feeling better, and we can get him back on the podcast, and he'll be with us next time for you guys, because I know you guys enjoy when we're together. So I'll see you next time.